started when we were. It started when we were. It started when we were. It started when we were younger. You were mine. Younger, you were mine. Younger, you were mine. Younger, you were mine. nobody still. But you will always be my wild, but you will always be my wild, but you will always be my wild, but you will always be my another brother's taken, another brother's taken, another brother's taken, another brother's taken. Started when we were younger, you were mine. 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 Started when we were, started when we were, started when we were, started when we were. Even though we used to argue with someone, that's alright, girl, that's alright. Even though we used to argue with someone, that's alright, girl, that's alright. Even though we used to argue with someone, that's alright, girl, that's alright. Even though we used to argue with someone, that's alright, girl, that's alright. It started when we were younger, you were. 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 Though we used to argue with some, though we used to argue with some, though we used to argue with some, though we used to argue with some. Even though